opportunity, I once again thank the Chief Minister and the British High Commission for partnering and collaborating together so that we could start official commemoration of Remembrance Day here in Nagaland too. And when we talk about Remembrance Day, when we talk about past history, past incidents, the obvious subject that comes to mind is the Battle of Kohima. It's a part of a history of Nagas, stands out when we talk about war. And today, the conversation is also going to be centered around that, but hopefully we'll go beyond that. So, my good friend Kikon, thank you for joining us this evening. He was more than 1,000 kilometers away from here yesterday, flew in from Bangalore, drove from Guwahati this morning to join us. So thank you, Monlungo, for joining us. What are your opening thoughts on having Remembrance Day in Nagaland after 80 years?
Two things. It's an event Abu is organizing, so I can't afford to miss it. Second, we have the Honorable Chief Minister in the audience, so that's another privilege for me as a writer as well. So these are the two things. But the opening thoughts I wanted to share with all of you is that this Remembrance Day is not just about the Nagas, but it's about the entire forces that fought in the Battle of Kohima. We say a lot of things about that, but two things which reminds me, which are fundamental to Naga discourse or Naga narrative is the fact that we come from a very long tradition of the oral storytelling. And so there are no, I would say not many books written which carries the perspective and the narrative of the locals during the Battle of Kohima. So that's one thing we wanted to promote and share. The other is an African proverb, which I always say, people misinterpret it because it can be used by anybody for any context. But as the saying goes, until the lion learns how to write, history will always celebrate the hunter. So that's something I wanted to start with.
Absolutely. I'm not an expert on this subject, okay, so apologies in advance. I'm not an expert, but my friend here is a researcher, he's a historian, he's researched this elaborately, and he's written books, poems, and literature on it. I remember during the COVID years, he was deeply working on this, apart from other public responsibilities. So, since you know most of the background and you've done enormous research, interacted with local population, gone back to history, read several books, my first question to you would be, how did we get here? Here in a sense, how did this battle reach us? Why, where, from? I mean, how did we get here?
First off, as we've been discussing, this was a battle which was not started by the Nagas, which was not for the Nagas, and which is not even today celebrated because of the participation of the Nagas. So the question is very valid because when I first wrote, as you mentioned, book of poems, I was not looking at the Battle of Kohima per se, but I was looking at identity and the dignity of identity that I champion for this region, not just Nagas, but for the northeastern region. So in the process, I came across a lot of books on the Battle of Kohima, and the entire Battle of Imphal as well, which was written by, obviously, British historians, American journalists, and there were very few written even on the Indian soldiers participating as part of the British Indian Army in the Battle of Kohima. So that led me to think, what did the Nagas go through during that period when the Japanese attacked Kohima, or the British, garrison? It was a small garrison, but it was very small. The battles should have been very, very quick, but it had its historical significance unbeknownst to the natives. So that was one of the motivation and inspiration as well. So how did we land up here? It's a very interesting question. We were looked at as geography. When the Battle of Kohima happened, 1944, remember the British Empire were on its way. When they first came to India, they were the heights of its glory. But when the Battle of Kohima happened, they were on its way. They were going down. They were like, if the Americans had not supported with the air, power, and if the Nagas had not participated, there would not have been a decisive victory for the British Empire in the Battle of Kohima. And the story could have been different.
And as I was saying this morning also, we were living peaceful lives, going about our lives like how our forefathers always did. And out of nowhere, the planes arrived, gunfire, tanks, our lives were overturned. Devastation, war, violence, and nobody knew what was happening. It wasn't our war, it was somebody else's war. Out of nowhere, superpowers are clashing, and the paddy fields which we toiled and made food for and grew our vegetables suddenly became the most dangerous places. They had to vacate, run away from their villages, families were torn apart. So you interacted with so many people while writing the book. You must have met people who were actually part of that war. We all have war stories. And can you share some anecdotes of what happened as these forces started clashing here?
I must admit, after interviewing a lot of people who knew about the war, who had memory about the war, I developed some sort of a PTSD, like trauma, even thinking of the stories they share. It's traumatic. But let me put it within the context, of how it happened. First, the Nagas were witness to the violence of the British Army when they came to the Naga Hills in 1832. And it was a different sort of entry. They wanted a route to China via Myanmar, those days Burma. So they used this, the Highway 39 that we have today. They actually made this so that they could go there. But they didn't realize that Nagas will, fiercely resist the entry into our land. And for 47 years, they could not even establish a political headquarters or a political administrative headquarters in the Naga Hills. From 1832 to 1867, not 67, 1887. It took them a long time to establish that. That period was a period of extreme violence. I tried to document how many Naga warriors, we were headhunters, were killed in the process of establishing that political administrative headquarters in Kohima. Second, if I look at it, after they established, there was an overture and establishing, some administrative policy towards this. It's still today, we are continuing with a colonial hangover in terms of that policy. I'll not get into that. But the second phase,
we'll get into that later.
We'll get into later, yeah. On identity, sorry. Because it's mixed with that, right? The second encounter was the violence of the Battle of Kohima. But prior to that, as the two ladies I just met from London were telling me, the role of Charles Posey in establishing, a relation far and wide in the Naga Hills must be commended. Because before, we must remember the events leading up to this. Nagas won't know because they were not aware of what is happening in Myanmar. But I must also remind you that by the time the Burma campaign started, Piso was already in Rangoon. And Piso is this tall Naga leader who galvanized the imagination of Naga people into movement. So he was in Rangoon, insurance salesman. He was approached by the Japanese intelligence officers. And that's where he actually got wind of what Subhash Chandra Bose was doing with the INA. And how the Japanese had promised them freedom if they helped them fight and attack the British army. So that's how not everybody, but at least the Naga National Council were aware of the intention of the Japanese forces, the Imperial Japanese Army. So I mean, if you think of how did we land up, having that battle, which is now considered as the Stalingrad of the East, the greatest battle ever fought by the British Empire, according to the National Army Museum of the British. History changing, all that. So and how it actually restored the image and prestige of the British Empire in the declining years. So it's something which we never envisaged, which never we initiated, but it happened to us because we were at a location where it was critical for the Japanese army to actually defeat the entire Allied forces. I mean, a victory here would signify that.
Yeah, and also we are also talking from the Allied force point of view, from the democratic point of view. We're saying that if the British had not won in Kohima, the course of history would have been different, democracy would have been different, which I also mentioned. But let's also look at it from the other angle. Let's look at it from the Japanese point of view. They overran huge parts of Asia reached here. And you mentioned earlier, the British Empire was on a downswing. And don't you also think, as many historians have noted on the other side, that if the Japanese had not overrun large parts of Asia, many of these states and countries which were under colonial rule, they would have continued that way. The decolonization and independence achievement of many countries to our east happened because of the Japanese movement.
I think I mentioned Charles Boxey. Why I mentioned him is because when he came here as a deputy commissioner, he has already fought a war in the Middle East, and he's an experienced retired army officer who would come here and taken over. So in terms of how we can compare 1941 with 44, the British were actually prepared mentally. But at that time, the preparation was not just them. The entire American Air Force, US Air Force, and the US military engineers had come and improved the railway service in Assam, because they were building airfields in the upper Assam. There's a whole story about the hump. The hump is actually the Patka Hills, Kachin Hills, when they wanted the shortest route to supply their arms, fuel, food, and ammunition from upper Assam to Yunnan province. And that was also part of the entire US strategy to support the Chinese defeat the Japanese there in Yunnan province. And that's part of thwarting the Burma campaign as well. But their presence in Assam helped because they had trained in a very short period of time a number of pilots to transfer equipment. And the decisive reason, besides the help of the Nagas, in the Battle of Kohima was the air support that they got. Yeah. Because by that time they had already from the Americans, yeah. So they were in a sense in 1944 they were prepared. So when I mentioned 1944, I also like to reflect on the Indian refugees who were coming back from Burma because of the atrocities and because they were being chased away. So they had walked thousands of kilometers, and in Kohima they found rest camp. So if you know Dimapur, there's a place called Burma camp. That camp was actually named because they housed the refugees from here, because Dimapur was a railway, and from there they went to other parts of India. I've read stories from Goa, from Kerala, from Karnataka about that particular period, how the Nagas took care of these refugees who when they reach this place, they're not used to climbing steep mountains and surviving. And most of them were laborers, or they're not rich people. The rich Indians flew or took the steamer, but those that were left behind did not have enough means to buy their way out using those means. So they had to walk. Many people died on the way. But when they reached Kohima, they were like zombies that were really taken care of. So Charles Boxey had organized the Nagas to take care of these refugees, and in that they had sort of established a system where they would train the locals. And the lady was mentioning that her grandfather actually built the Naga hospital, Kohima. You're coming to that, yeah. So I just want to fast forward. Actually, it was established because they already had trained manpower, and credit goes to Charles Boxey. Yeah. So, between 41 and 44, when the Japanese came, the problem with them was of strategy, military strategy. And it was not just strategy of what to do in the field. It was also, the politics behind and social. Yeah, social, yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, as I was saying earlier, anytime anyone wants to participate, you can raise your hand, make a comment, make a question. Later, as we progress, I would also request maybe Chief Minister can share an anecdote. Many of you may not know, but he was sharing today. His father was part of the Assam regiment, was part of the Second World War, and I have heard many stories of the wartime from the Chief Minister during our private sharings. So, sir, if you could later in the process share an anecdote or give a point, we would love to hear from you. Moving on, you said the final victory was because the Americans' air support came in, but again I want to dwell on the fact that much of the support, the logistics, and the ground intelligence which the Nagas contributed towards the victory of the war. I've read many books where their contributions were acknowledged as helpers, as carrying their goods, stretcher bearers and all that. But you have shared many times that their contribution was beyond that, which has not been written about. And here, with writers like you emerging, and some in the audience also, today we are now writing our own stories.
I mean, that's precisely why I wrote this book. I was looking at all the narratives, and all the narratives ignored the cultural, social, political support of the Naga people. I mentioned Piso and how the Japanese approached him. With the entire Indian National Army also, Subhash Chandra Bose was with the Japanese Imperial Army. So if you look at the support of Nagas, and I'm coming to them, at the heart of Naga support was not political. Because Piso was the leader, and he was with the Japanese Imperial Army. But he could not hold sway over the minds and the hearts of the Naga people because it did not belong to one leader. And I say this because I simplify it by looking at the interaction between the Japanese and the British with the Nagas. When the Japanese came, and obviously they were not so well prepared. They thought that they'll overrun Kohima in a matter of 1 week, 2 weeks, and they prepared only ration for that amount of time. When their ration ran out, it's not the ammunition. When their food ration ran out, they initially used to go and buy pig, the chicken, all that, rice from the locals. But when it ran out, and when they were losing in the battles, they started harassing the locals. They started going and taking our pigs, our rice from our granaries and all that. And you see, that was the turning point. Because culturally, and I always say that, food for the Nagas is one of the most important part of our culture. It can stir the emotion and the support of the Naga people. They went and killed a pig. That's a national offense for the Nagas. You cannot come to my house and kill my pig. I will wage a war against you whether you are mighty or big or a superpower, I don't care. And exactly that happened. They didn't care about the political movement. They looked at the sacrilege, the insult. They looked at the fact that Japanese came and stole from the granary. It was not done. Exactly. And many people laugh, but it's a fact. It's a fact, because when the Japanese came, it did not take them 1 day to raise the whole Kohima village to grounds.
So basically they lost the moral support of the locals, because when they came in, they were painted as very terrible people coming in. Japan Manu Ahula say, Japan coming. I have a
Abu, that's the British propaganda.
Yeah,
but the Japanese also came saying, we look like each other, we are brothers,
So when they turned up, they looked similar, they ate the same food. It was sort of surprise for them, because the propaganda was that these evil people are coming, which was okay till then. Then they ran out of food, started stealing the pigs, cows, chickens. That's when they lost their moral support.
Yeah, also when the villagers were, when the villagers were burned, the villagers had to run to the jungles. So they were provided food by the British soldiers because they were airdropped. Yeah. And it was in plenty. There were some 42 million cigarettes thrown about by the planes because, the army used it to calm their nerves. But, a lot of that kind of support won the heart. And it was not because of any political support to the cause espoused by Piso.
I have an elderly villager who's no more now, whose name is Japan Se. In my Angami days, he was born during the Japanese arrived, the one who met the Japanese at his birth, Japan Se. Rachel and Claire, who've come all the way from England for the first time to Nagaland. Thanks for coming to Nagaland. But what's interesting about them is they are the grandchildren of Major Horace Twigger, a garrison engineer with the British Army, the Royal Engineers that time. And their grandfather was the engineer who helped build the Naga hospital that we have down there as you enter Kohima. So if the two of you could just get up and show us your faces, and everybody give you a round of applause. Thank you very much. And I think, please be seated. Their aunt, their uncle spent 2 years in Kohima when the grandfather was helping build that hospital, including 2 dogs.
Yes.
Right, 2 dogs. Pickle or something.
Sorry?
Yeah, so they spent 2 years here, lived with our people, and this evening I'd request you if you can just share some of the emotion and the journey which you've undertaken with us.
Who lived in Kohima with his parents from 1946 and 1947, spoke about living in India. He was born in India and lived here till he was 12 years old. His father was Horace, who was in the British Army and an engineer who travelled across India doing projects with the British Army for infrastructure. In 1944, just before the Battle of Kohima, or just, I think as it was about to start, I'm not exactly sure when, he was commissioned to go to Kangatombi to build a camp for withdrawal of the British from the Japanese. After the Battle of Kohima, he was then commissioned to come here to Kohima. They lived on Cookie Pickett Hill, which was a name we knew from when we were really little. And we got a picture of the house they lived in, which we were told was the old officers' mess, which is now, I think, where there's a water tower on Cookie Pickett Hill. And we've got lots of memories from our dad about living in this area and the friendships they had with members of the Assam Rifles, with actually Charles Pawsey, who was a friend of our grandfather's, and Colonel Keane, who was connected to the Assam Rifles. And they spoke very, very fondly of the Nagas, because the Naga people helped in the construction of the hospital and supported the work that was being done, while my grandfather supported them overseeing and working out how to build this hospital.
Very much. Members of the audience can definitely interact with them later in the evening. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Round of applause for them, please.
So, to our honorable CM, his father was in the Assam regiment, and if I remember, a lot of our, not just Nagas, but a lot of communities in the Northeast were enlisted in the Assam regiment to fight, to be part of the Burma campaign by the British Army. So your father was in the Assam regiment. So if you can kindly share a little bit of how about his experience that you know of, would be very, would be delighted with, like we're discussing about how it will be relevant to our conversation today.
Well, when the war was going on in and around Kohima, then my village is 1 hour drive from Kohima. And there, the Japanese soldiers who were sick or who was injured, there used to be kind of a makeshift treatment place to nurse them, to treat them. And then the British came to know, so the Britishers came to the village. And then they were afraid to go down, so they were shelling the guns from top. And then they were chased away. In the process, some Japanese died, some injured, and they ran away. But I believe 2 Japanese were killed that period. And this story, in recent time, it was told, the story back home in Japan. And now they are investigating, and they have found the locations where the 2 dead bodies were also buried. So this is going on. Why I go back to that is, that time my mother was a small girl, I believe, and their house used to be a morong where the young boys and girls come and sleep in the place together. listening to stories. A morong is like a female morong, a male morong is like that. So later on, when British came and settled in our village, then the young girls used to go and fetch water and give to the British soldiers who had settled. And what my mother told me is, when they give water or some carry those things for them, then they used to give them chocolates or some tin foods. And she told me that is the tastiest thing they had. So it inspired them to go and fetch water for them again and again. So that's the story. By then, my father, being a young man, and then he went to Assam regiment under British. And then he grew up. Then when they became a full army, many of the peoples of them, they were sent scouting in the east because the Japanese had conquered the Burmese. So like that, they had so many stories about the visit of this eastern area, scouting, and then so many stories about their friends. And I had seen one of my uncle, whose leg was amputated in the battle, and then he lived for a long time also. So my father also had served the British Assam Regiment, 1st Battalion. And so for that, when India got freedom in 1947, then the government declared amnesty for the bachelors who want to take discharge from the army and go back to their places to build their own homes like that. So they came away. And so we have seen their tokmas. So they were given like King George Medal, then Burma stars and regiment stars like that. Armies, they used to have a lot of decorations. So we are very innocent, but a lot of stories. And then after that, the insurgency came, Naga political issue. So all the villages were burned, and then the running and shifting. In the process, his medals were damaged. And one time he was sent to the Shillong Happy Valley where he stayed, because he was, for some time he was in Happy Valley, Assam Rifle Training Center as training assistant instructor. So they did a good job again, but I think it got damaged again. So like a lot of stories. So the story which our elders told us is that these Britishers, white people, were very generous, very good to the locals, shared their food like that. But the British came and started setting our granaries, killing our animals. So that story is, that narrative is very strong. That's how I think it has changed the mindset of the Nagas and did a lot of damage also, I think.
Also write about the violence, the devastation and all that. But today, the narrative has changed. Today we're using the experience of war to tell the world that peace is the only option. And we have become ambassadors of peace. During the 75th anniversary of the battle, in a very historic and landmark occasion, the ambassador, the High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, and the ambassador of Japan to India shared the same platform in Kohima and spoke peace. You were there?
I was there, yeah. So, I mean, what the British High Commissioner and the Japanese ambassador to India came, and it was a very solemn occasion because 75th, but 75th did not mean the same to Japanese or other British. I mean, it did not mean the same. They had different versions of it. If you look at Kohima, it's a beautiful place, natural air conditioning. But the two most important landmarks of Kohima is the Kohima War Cemetery and the cathedral. So the church or the cathedral is like a symbol of peace, and Kohima War Cemetery, I mean, it's piece of England in another foreign country. So anyway, it's a memorial. But these are the two most significant sort of feature for Kohima as a town. And the British, right from 1832 till date, had come and impacted not just our polity, not just our culture, but impacted even our history. And how? So it's like it's immense. You would require you to read hundreds of books to actually understand that. But today, as you rightly pointed out, things are changing. I asked the Japanese why they don't have a memorial. They're still searching for the remains of their dead in the Naga hills. It's a very daunting task, but it's one culture which is similar to the Nagas. Even if, suppose we recently experienced how prominent personality from any village buried outside of his village, it is required, or sometimes the villagers consider it important to bring the dead body that is buried long back to their village. This is something we share with the Japanese.
Right.
And they have actually been doing this in the whole of Southeast Asia. Nagaland is not the only exception. But here, they say that they don't consider it important to have a war memorial because they lost the war. It was a significance of humiliation for them. So they don't consider it important. But they built a cathedral in Kohima as a mark of peace, as a symbol of peace. So that's why they're building something here today.
Yeah, I'm coming to that.
And if I look at it, on the 75th anniversary, our Honorable Chief Minister was there. In Jotsoma, we held that. And I had an opportunity to talk to the British High Commissioner then. And, because the most important story in the media was not the 75th anniversary. It was about war veterans whose pensions have not been increased, and some of whose pensions they have not received. So it was another story. But today, from that to an age of collaboration, I think the transition has been beautiful. We look at the colonial period where the Britishers came. They were gifted stars. They also took away stars, without permission, and they put it in a museum called Peace River Museum in Oxford University. So the Peace River Museum, they are collaborating, openly collaborating with our scholars to actually allow us to take back those stars if we have the facilities for that. And I must commend our Honorable Chief Minister for supporting that that process, and Abu for being part of that process. This is just one aspect of it. From the Japanese side, I've been discussing with their officials, and they're very keen of doing more than what they're allowed to do. One of the challenges was the permit not being given to come to Nagaland. Yeah. They'll be given visa to India, but they'll not be given permits to come to Nagaland. As if a Japanese coming to Nagaland will create ripples for the mighty India. That kind of thinking comes to my mind. But I think tomorrow we should be able to articulate what is possible with them, because they are already investing through their international financial arms projects, forestry projects. They're giving us, they're engaging with a lot of programs. I think you would be best able to tell the story. Yeah. But I'm saying that from an age of indifference to an age of collaboration, I think that transition has taken place.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you were talking about the Japanese engagement. Not only assistance in the cathedral, but there's a lot of engagement going on. And only recently, Chief Minister and Japanese ambassador inaugurated the Peace Park, part of an eco park in Kohima. So I think that's also going to be another significant landmark in historic Kohima, and there's a lot of partnership and collaboration in the development area, in sustainability, in environment. So yeah, there is participation. Yes, but now the narrative has changed, as you said. We are now talking about collaboration. But most importantly, we are also spreading the message of peace. And a new narrative that's emerged, which I keep going back to, is that today we are telling the Naga stories. And you see, it's a significant piece of history. It did impact not just us, but the whole world. And Nagaland and Nagas have also come of age, and we are now carrying out activities and events and collaborating with friends from around the world to also claim our place in history. To claim our place in history and to also highlight the contributions we made, be it in winning the war, in supporting the forces of democracy. And today, the narrative has changed, as I said. Kohima, Nagaland, and the Naga people are using the experience of the past war to tell the world that we must be ambassadors of peace. Peace is the only option, never again. So that's, I think, what's happening today, and that's the story tomorrow.
I think, Abu, you would do us a favor if you can highlight the initiative of Kohima Educational Trust and the Sharing Scholarship that
absolutely, yeah. So there's this Kohima Education Trust, which comprises of connections to our veterans, former family members, and they're doing a lot of charitable good exercises and social work, not just in Kohima but across Nagaland. Even in the Indo-Myanmar border, from Naga, they're sponsoring students, they're giving scholarships. We've collaborated with the British High Commission Office to now select scholars from Nagaland to be part of the Chieftain's Scholarship, which I think is significant. We're collaborating in many other areas with the British, be it in sport, be it in culture. They've been our country partners at the Hornbill Festival for the past 3 years. We're looking forward to that this year also. So now the future is about collaborating, partnering, helping each other, and also learning from each other's experience. So it's a two-way traffic.
You see, the British authors who've written on the Battle of Kohima have reached out to me as well. They want to now write about the story of the Nagas. Robert Lyman, for instance. So they are also looking at how that narrative must be brought up. So it's not like they would only glorify their own army who fought in the battle here, but they would also want to tell the stories of the natives. Unfortunately, most of those who participated in the Battle of Kohima have either died or they are very old. And the Japanese are, on the other hand, they are very active. They're not just on the Battle of Kohima. In fact, I'll just give you some tidbit. One, the Japanese historians consider this battle not as Battle of Kohima. They know it as the Battle of Imphal. In fact, it is only recently, after our Chief Minister visited Japan, that yes. Foundation. Only after that, there's a professor who came out with a book called Battle of Kohima. So it has had its impact. And they didn't know the significance of Kohima because this is the only battle in the history of Japanese Imperial Army where a serving Japanese general defied the Emperor's order. General Sato.
Collaboration and interaction with other countries and all that. But then, what I wanted to ask is, what do you think about the PAP permit that restricts who comes to Nagaland and who the center decides who can come to Nagaland and who can't. So that makes it difficult for exchange of ideas and exchange of conversation between Naga scholars and international scholars. And it's very hard for, even if we have international conferences or international seminars, it's very difficult for foreign scholars to come and join us unless they are a part of a group. And friends can't come and visit us, foreign friends. So I wanted to ask, what do you think about this issue and how this impacts the intellectual sphere of Nagas and our future as scholars?
As an author, how do you pick between the war of words to make history relevant for the youth of Nagaland. Thank you.
Any more? Okay, I'll take the PAP first. We're talking about, talking about the war, the history, and PAP pops up, and I see, friends in two tables rolling their eyes. Because I know you guys went through a lot to get that paperwork done, and we're happy you're here. Yes, it's a serious issue, and it's definitely, Madam Vincent, thank you for raising that. The PAP regime was lifted temporarily for some time. It was earlier restricted area permit, now politically correct, permitted, protected area permit. But having said that, the state government is taking up this issue with the Indian ministry so that this regime is relaxed. We have a lot of problems, we have a lot of challenges for foreigners to come in. It's not only you, we at the government level have also faced this feedback from several angles, several verticals. I was in the Sasuka Foundation in Japan, and they were planning parliamentarians meet here in Kohima to have a workshop, but their PAP was not cleared. Yesterday, our foreign friends, PAP was not cleared even when they took off from their respective cities, and they only got that when they landed in Dimapur. So these are real challenges, but the state government has been taking up this issue with the state government of India. Even the state cabinet have discussed this and written to the Union Home Minister to lift this regime. We've also assured the government of India that we are putting due diligences and reassuring policies in place so that the open permit is also not misused. So hopefully, through platforms like this and through the initiative led by our Chief Minister and students and scholars like you, including the issue being raised by the Nagaland Tourism Association, because apart from intellectual aspects, tourism, economy, everything is being impacted. And it's so challenging for a person to get the PAP cleared along with struggling with the visa. So it's like, let's just avoid this place for a tourist. That would happen. So this is being taken up by the government, and we hope that the government of India will understand and see and address this issue and lift this regime, because Nagaland is a safe place. I think the streets of Kohima, Dimapur and Mokokchung are safer than the streets of Kolkata, Mumbai and Delhi any day, isn't it? And we have so much to offer. Blue skies, green mountains, hospitality, food, music. Every evening is a Friday evening here in Nagaland. So we do have, the government is seriously taking up that, and we hope that the government of India will understand and address this issue. Relevance of history to the youth.
Can I just add to what you just said? I mean, if you want to stop me, you can. But I must appreciate the government of Nagaland. They have written to the Ministry of Home Affairs to lift this PAP, or in my understanding, to actually regulate so that regulate it properly, so that just well-meaning visitors would be allowed to come this time. It also impacts tourism in a big way. And for a state like Nagaland, it's very important that this is relaxed. The other thing, I would like to put on record is that it is not just this. I've had friends from other countries asking me why it's like that. And it comes to all of us. Sometimes, we are very secure, we are very protected. I feel very secure that our friends from Assam Rifles are here. I feel very secure. But if you are to have a PAP regime in the 21st century, I think we expose ourselves. We show that we are insecure as a nation. We say or we show that the idea of India is not very strong in these frontiers. I think a secure frontier is important. However, it is the people which will secure the frontier. So I think that kind of trust should be mutual. And we have discussed this at many forums, in Delhi also, all over the country, we've been discussing this issue. There are some scholars who wants to come here, whose visa has been rejected, whose visa has been cancelled, they cannot come here. So I feel that in the realm of scholarship, whether it's critical or not to the idea of India, we should be enabling people to come and engaging with our youth. I think we should be very confident about where the heart of our youth lie. And history teaches us that. So coming back to his question.
Absolutely true. politician speaking. I'm just trying to diplomat here.
No, I'm not speaking as a politician. I'm speaking from my heart.
There's a hand raised, please. Honorable Chief Minister.
Yeah.
I think PAP is my subject. So, unless I speak,
And so stood up for PAP.
you may feel that
From the heart.
I'm hiding. See how this restricted area permit came. It is all about so-called Naga insurgency, the Naga political movement. And also the Armed Forces Special Power Act, ASPA, which we call it Draconian law. It still exists in our state. And even our state is known as disturbed state, because Naga issue is not resolved. So over the years, things has improved, development is taking places, and our young boys and girls getting education, and everything good things are happening. But just because Naga issue is not resolved, all these exist. From restricted area permit, it is relaxed to protected area permit. Then in 2018, it was lifted. Then again, it is reimposed on 17 December last year. And on 22nd December, we had a Northeast Northern Ministers meeting where all the Northeastern ministers and governors and the Home Minister of India is the chairman of NEC. The Donor Minister is vice chairman. And in that, I pick up this issue. Why it was reposed was the restricted area permit, PAP, protected area permit. Because the incidents in Manipur, the ethnic clash between the Meiteis and the Kukis, and because the Kukis are related to Mizos, Zo Kukis. So while reposing PAP in Manipur and Mizoram, they included Nagaland, because we are immediate neighbors. And you are aware, Kukis are in all the northeastern states. They are more of a nomadic. They are everywhere. And they are scattered. That's how this could not be removed. I raised very strongly because last year our Hampi festival was just concluded 1st to 10 December, and the 17th December they reimposed the PAP, which was very unfortunate. I was very upset. So I raised. Okay, we were receiving a few thousand tourists during festival also. And this year we could have tourists up to the tune of 250,000 visited that Hornbill period. And now when everything is so good, people are coming, investors are coming, and then you reimpose again, then it is very bad for us. I raised that issue and requested the Home Minister who was present, who was chairing the meeting. So in his concluding remark, he never said anything, no reply to me. So Christmas and New Year, and never in Nagaland, January is like whole month is holiday. But I call a cabinet meeting on 6th January. Then cabinet said, and we had passed a strong resolution and also an appeal to Government of India, Home Ministry, to relax, to review the PAP reimpose again in our state. So even this time, where we're going to get a visitor, you are aware the evangelist Billy Graham. So Billy Graham came to Nagaland because Nagaland was celebrating centenary of Christianity in Nagaland by the American Baptist. Christianity came to our land. So in 1972, Billy Graham came to Naga. And there was a huge crusade I attended as a youth. And this time his son wanted to come to Naga. And the church people approached me to make a request if he can come and grace the Hornbill Festival as chief guest. So I was requested to write to Franklin Graham, Reverend Dr. Franklin Graham. I said, I don't know him, I can't write to him. But I said, no, their team, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and the Samaritan Purse. So I wrote, and he quickly replied me that it will be honor for him to visit Nagaland, and I'll be pleased. And friends of our Christians wants to have a crusade and welcome me and my friends. So I hope you'll support it. I said, definitely, it will be our pleasure. And they requested me to meet the Honorable President of India on his visit and returning to meet the President of India, a courtesy call. So I went and met the President. I submitted all the request letters. So I believe the other day, the church joint Christian Forum had made a statement that he is coming, and I'm informed that he and his associate, they got their papers, but they want to bring a lot of popular Christian singers, but they are not getting their papers through. So we are facing this problem, I'm aware, and next week I'll be going to Delhi to take a final call. And I've already met the Home Minister in his office also with my colleagues, and we requested them. So that time he said, no problem, I'll give you instruction, we will not obstruct anything. And so his Senior Vice President, Mr. Victor, and the McKay, his chief organizer, they have already visited Nagaland, and they had visited the location of the Kisama Hornbill site, and also the crusade where they're going to have. They're expecting a few thousands believers, and that's how it's going. But the relationship between the US and India is not so pleasant, and that's how I'm a little worried. But they assured me already, and I also heard kind of information that two of them got their papers, but others are not getting. And so, in fact, today also, I had a meeting with the church leaders, and they were showing their concern, so I told them the story. So this is the problem, because of Naga political issue. You know, Nagas are living in 4 states, Assam, Manipur, Arunachal, and Nagaland. A big group is in Myanmar, who are also recognized and running a Naga self-autonomous government. And therefore, our Naga political issue, unless resolved, there are so many problems which have been, labeled could not be removed because there is no complete peace or there is tension. Though over the years, 28 years of ceasefire and dialogue is going on. And you are aware framework agreement signed and also agreed position. We are the government, we are the facilitators only, and they are the negotiators, the government of India and the Naga groups. They are talking. So what they signed, they should conclude, implement it. That is our request, which should be acceptable, honorable, and inclusive. That is our demand. And I hope things will get better. We have young people here, educated scholars, researchers, and also so many talented people. But because of our situation, even our development, our growth is badly impacted. So we hope for the best, and I think with our bright youth, I think we'll overcome all this. Thank you.
You're satisfied with what you just heard. We hope for better days ahead. And to sum up the conversation, I would like to thank everybody. And as I said, that tomorrow is to collaborate with the world, push the Nagaland narrative, push Nagaland's contribution to history, and make global citizens of our youth so that Nagas can also contribute positively towards the goodness of humanity. We have the talent, the capability, and the caliber to not only excel but contribute towards the good of the country and the good of humanity as a whole. We hope that the experiences of history, and we hope that with visionary leadership, we will be able to change the narrative, and Nagas will take and claim our rightful place in history, where we contributed, and where the world will come to us. We will also go out to the world, collaborate and partner, and rise together. So thank you, Mr. Kikon, for joining this evening. Thank you, Chief Minister, sir. It's precious for the Chief Minister to spend an evening with us, and I hope that each and every member of the audience, especially the youngsters and the students, will appreciate this evening that we've had. Thank you very much, Chief Minister, sir.